chat for the hearts that sustain us. Bring in the love where the waves crash and scatter. Words form a bond and they endlessly chain us. Kindness that matters. Voices arise and the flow never falter. Building a space where the ties last forever. Chat is the place where respect doesn't alter, holding us clever. Grateful are we for the sparks that ignite us. Chat lifts us up, every voice brings its power. Threads of goodwill through the storms that unite us. Hope we devour. Here in this space, every heart finds its meaning. Words weave a net where the world feels much kinder. Chat is the pulse, every moment redeeming, binding reminder. Grateful are we for the sparks that ignite us. Chat lifts us up, every voice brings its power. Threads of goodwill through the storms that unite us. Hope we devour. Quiet nights and the storms full of thunder, chat holds the light, every word a new tether. Strength in the love that connects us, no sunder, lifting together. Hats off to chat for the joy in your giving. Every kind soul brings a world that feels brighter. May these connections endure while we're living, bond growing tighter. Hats off to chat for the joy in your giving. Every kind soul brings hats off to chat for the hearts that sustain us. Bring in the love where the waves crash and scatter. Words form a bond and they endlessly chain us. Kindness that matters. Voices arise and the flow never falter. Building a space where the ties last forever. Chat is the place where respect doesn't alter, holding us clever. Grateful are we for the sparks that ignite us. Chat lifts us up, every voice brings its power. Threads of goodwill through the storms that unite us. Hope we devour. Here in this space, every heart finds its meaning. Words weave a net where the world feels much kinder. Chat is the pulse, every moment redeeming, binding reminder. Grateful are we for the sparks that ignite us. Chat lifts us up every
guys. Wow, that happened all of a sudden, and I wasn't ready for it. I was plugging in my keyboard batteries. They need to be recharged. And so I was trying to quick change out the batteries before the intro was done. And I almost succeeded. Y'all. How are y'all doing this evening? Did everybody have a great 4th of July? We had a lovely holiday. We had the whole family over. Let me get a drink. Let me get a lozenge. Because I can tell already my mouth is going to be dry. Paolo, hola. How are you, my dear? It is good to see you. Indigo, sweetie. It is great to see you. Paolo, you win first in award. Indigo, I know I was looking away from it, no face. I was looking away from it because I was busy. I was trying to plug it in and I got distracted. Leave him be. Oh, guys, we are going to have a rare treat. First up, hold your horses. I can't even begin to tell you how exciting this is. Let me move my things so he can arrange it. Come on. We have a soda cat, y'all. We have a soda cat. Paolo, you've won first in award. Check it out, Paolo, what you won today. Isn't that lovely? Come on, soda cat. Soda cat first thing, y'all. And an Orion upset that he's not getting attention. There you got a cat butt. Cat tails. Lots of cat tails. Hey, Kristen, how are you? We are starting off with an appetizer, a little amuse-bouche, so to speak. We have a soda. We do. We have a soda. Indy was first? Was Indigo first? Thank you for going back and checking, No Face. Sometimes it doesn't show up who was absolutely first. So did get a lion cut, Indigo. I shaved him. I regularly shave him because he mats so easily that if I don't shave him, he turns into one big mat. Indigo, do you know who your uh, first in award is a representation of? Do you know who that is? Yeah, they can share. Sometimes the chat on this end doesn't tell us very well what order the chats come in on, and I can't see it on YouTube. Well, scotch doesn't need to be brushed at all. Scotch does just fine and he doesn't get mad. But even if we, even brushing soda daily is not sufficient, is not sufficient to keep his mats down. I would have to. So this is Alfred E. Newman, and he was the mascot. You have rehab in the morning? Good, Susan. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're here. And thank you for telling me. We'll put the pleasantries aside and get right to the meat because I think he has luxurious fur. Yes, he does. He is like, it's like velvet. It's like the softest velvet you've ever velveted. It's just lovely. Yes, you're a good boy. You're a good boy. So let's get the pleasantries out of the way and tell me. I mean, this is hi. Yeah, I know. Oh my goodness. You're gonna show off for everybody, huh? You gonna lick my nose clean? Yeah, lick my nose clean. So, those of you who read the book, give me a quick summary of your thoughts. I found him talking a lot about you have pleasant trees here. I'll tell you about Alfred E. Newman later, Indigo. He was the Mad Magazine mascot. Still is, actually. Mad Magazine, I don't even know if Mad Magazine still exists. And we don't have Adam here to tell us yet. Adam would know exactly who Alfred E. Newman is. Oh my goodness, Soda, so much you want my nose. He will leave in just a moment, guys, because I do believe they are about to be fed. Yes, that would be excellent. See, he heard the feeding noises. He's not sure which way to come. There we go. That's enough of soba. We got tribalism, heart rehab, had a stent put in. Yes, that rehab is really important, Susan. We got tribalism. The dude wants to break down our barriers and have conversations. And I don't know about all hug and get along. All hug and get along might be a little, a little ambitious. A little ambitious. But I did hear a lot about the difference. Hi, Adam. How are you? We were just talking about the First In Award. I figured you would know this guy. You know that guy. I wasn't sure if Mad Magazine still existed, and I figured you were the person who would know. No, 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 Kristen. Don't, I wasn't, I'm glad we clarified. Yeah, it is a summation. You got a pretty good reference from the book at the end, Jonathan Haidt book. Which book is that? I will write it down. Let me get my book and my notepad back from where I set them. Hi, Dawn. How are you? It is good to see you. Here's the first in award for Indigo. We were supposed to read this book called Something Between Us. The mirroring's on. Something Between Us by Anand Pandian. That's what we were supposed to read. And I guess, unless anybody else has opening thoughts, I do think that he thinks we should. I mean, essentially it would be great to at least have conversations. Hug and get along. Hug and get along is going to take some time. But having conversations, you're hanging in there? What, me worry? Exactly. Exactly, Adam. The Righteous Mind. Okay. The Righteous Mind by Jonathan Haidt. Okay. Kristen, your bad spelling is all forgiven. I think it's important to break down barriers, but also acknowledge the reasons we don't get along can come from one group trying to take control over another. I want you to bring that up again in a little while, Indigo, because I think you're absolutely sort of right. And I will clarify in a little while. Anthropological approach to deep-seated divisions in America. Yes, Lupita. How are you? How are you? He is like a new term I heard just today, a blue MAGA liberal. Oh, tell me more about what a blue MAGA liberal is, Kristen. You're out of Audible credits? Okay, Dawn. It was good. It's good. It's a good book. I find it interesting. I find it interesting how much people try to gloss over the darkness in our country. We have to confront it and figure out ways to acknowledge it so patterns don't repeat. Big Chief, how are you? It is good to see you. I think you're right, Indigo, when you say we have to confront it. Here's what I will say is I've been thinking I've been thinking a lot about teeny tiny gradations and how some people have teeny tiny gradations about things. Now that I think of more, it's just the white left being jerks to liberals as usual. You regret typing it out a bit soon as you typed it out. Okay, Kristen. Blue Malaga liberal sounds like a dissonant salad. Yeah. Indefinido. Indigo says you have to study sociology and the reasons why people immigrate and how that impacts tribalism and integration of thoughts and culture. One does, but what do we do with those who aren't? Because we're not going to get everybody to do that. So we have to figure out ways to cross these lines and have these communications. Indefinido meant indigo. I bet it did. How? No, there was one point in the book, I think I've got it written down. Ryan, excuse me. So many interruptions, y'all. So let's trying to meet them where they are and understand that changing someone's thoughts takes a long time, and you may face a lot of backtracking when they are confronted with facts that they aren't. It takes a lot of trust to bridge divides with facts they aren't prepared to hear or understand. Generational rifts take a lot of time and energy to overcome. Yes. Yes, they do. So let's talk about we always have to guard against bad faith interlocutors using dialogue to wear you down. Oh, Big Chief, it's gonna be juicy. I hope it's juicy. So that's a good starting off point, Adam. How does one guard against bad faith interlocutors? That's one of those fine-grained distinctions that I think it's hard for people to make. How do you know the difference between someone who is just shining you on for the glory of dialogue? How do you distinguish between that, a bad faith interlocutor, and somebody who's just clumsy and doesn't know the language you're speaking? How how do you do that? And it requires, like all things, it requires practice. Let's go to the book. Let's look at page 44. And I'm going to read. Let me find the dialogue. So here we go. People cannot have, you don't let discussions go on forever. Time is the key. Yes, Adam, you need to nip things in the bud. You need to give people things in small snippets. You need to not give people unlimited access to your time. That is absolutely, absolutely vital. The first rule here about boundaries. Kristen, I disagree. I don't think it's that people don't have good ideas. I think it's that it's hard to teach. These are skills that are hard to teach, hard to learn, and hard to practice. I think you have to go slowly, bit by bit, because a lot of times information wasn't shared to certain age groups about specific topics. So it's about not overwhelming them with so much information, which ties right into people not having unlimited access to your time. What's the difference between boundaries and walls? Because a lot of what I was reading in this book was talking about the differences between boundaries and walls. All the skills. Doing this sort of work involves understanding different languages, understanding different ways of being, understanding different ways of perceiving the world, and holding those all as valid while you build an accurate representation of what you're seeing. Oh, Lupita, now tell me about it. Why do you feel like you read a different book? I think you can let them know there's some good sources that can help you. If you have specific questions, I can help answer them, but the person I'm assisting needs to do work too. Yes, you need to see that people are engaging in the material. Boundaries have doors which can be locked or unlocked. Yes, Adam. The other thing I think that's really important is people rarely look at the wall. People look at what's on the wall, but they don't look at the wall. The walls are put up and the walls stay there. They don't envision the room without the walls. Whereas boundaries are more flexible. They have doors in them. They can be locked or unlocked. You maintain the boundary. You clip the hedge. You look at it on either side of the hedge. For example, if I provide a book or documentary, that person would need to read or watch it in order to progress, not rely on me to summarize it for them. Even there, Indigo, I would say it depends. But yes, you think you're too high for this? Big Chief, we need your high opinion. We need your high opinion. I'm going to read an excerpt. Something had happened the previous evening in the parking lot of a nearby Walmart. Something that would go on to become national news that week. Amber Hensley, a woman from the Fargo suburb of Mapleton, got into an argument with three young women of Somali heritage because she felt they had parked their car too close to hers. One of the Somali women began recording the incident on her phone. On the video, which quickly stirred a viral uproar, you can see the women with permed blonde hair lean in menacingly and threaten, "We're going to kill every one of you effing Muslims. Why are you in our country anyway?" The next day, Hensley took to Facebook to apologize for not acting like a Christian, but she still lost her job at a local accounting firm. Yeah, none of us are worried, Big Chief. Yeah, it's a book. We're doing book club, honey. We're doing book club. It's a book called Something Between Us by Anand Pandian. He's an anthropologist, and it's about it's his quest to understand the deep social and political divides in American society and the everyday strategies that can overcome them. So, what did you guys think of that passage? Do you remember what came next after that incident? Because I was surprised. I was surprised by what came next. I didn't expect it at all. The next paragraph says, as Fargo's cultural liaison officer, Kemp helped to facilitate a meeting between the women involved in the confrontation at the headquarters of the Fargo Police Department. And what happened there was truly unexpected, as I learned firsthand from the Somali women when I had the chance to meet them in person that evening at an Italian restaurant in West Fargo. The book made you think of a Quran verse where God explains humans are argumentative, prone to disagreements and dispute. Yes, indeed, they are. Humans are that way. Indeed, we are. They learned that Hensley was still grieving the death of her father in Iraq and that she'd made a rash association with their hijabs. She apologized profusely for what she'd said, and the refugees from Somalia forgave her, explaining that they'd fled al-Shabaab militants themselves. They went to Hensley's employer to ask that she get her job back, and even made plans to celebrate their birthdays together in September. He writes about the atomized society where others become phantoms, thus refers to a society where individuals are isolated and disconnected to each other. Yes, yes, Lupita, he did. He did talk a lot about the loss of connection. But I think that comes from putting up walls rather than having boundaries. I would say it's not just that they were Muslim, it's about the Somali idea of community, I think. with my experience with Somalis, that community is important. Mm. He goes on to say, the author goes on to say, I wanted to understand why these young women were so keen on reconnection, reconciliation. One of them put it simply, we are neighbors, we should be united. With us at the table was a Somali American community leader who shared his own sense of what precipitated such outbursts. They fear the unknown, he said, as he described what he had come to feel about many of the Americans he had met in the Midwest. Social interaction was much more cautious and restricted than what he knew back home. This is a civilized country, he said. You don't know your neighbors. And when others preferred to keep to themselves, folks were too reluctant to reach out. You knock on the door to say hello. The next day they might call the police and say, he keeps knocking. I don't know what he wants. In the face of such suspicions, what these Somali American women did seemed all the more generous and courageous. They're making amends with a stranger in the wake of a violent outburst. Paul Krabenhoft and I talked about it the next morning. He was a Lutheran minister himself. He was a Lutheran himself and the son of Lutheran missionaries. He and his wife often volunteered with Lutheran social services, working alongside Bhutanese and Nepali immigrants in a community gardening project called Growing Together. As Paul saw it, people in the area were slowly getting used to these new immigrants. Everybody's evolving. We're all God's people. I brought up Matthew 22:39. Thou shalt love a neighbor as thyself. How did he think about this teaching? When I was young, I would have thought of that word neighbor more literally, Paul replied. Now I think of it as whomever I'm engaging with, whomever I'm talking to, like we are right now. If there's respect, if you can have a dialogue, it shows you can be kind in that relationship. We are all spooked. Indeed, we are. We're all spooked. And so, in a universe where we're all spooked, how do we how do we know in a world where we're all spooked and we're all on high alert, how safe it is how safe is it to reach out a hand? What people say is true. You need to put your own oxygen mask on first, right? That is a truism. But are the oxygen masks coming down? Do we need to, if the oxygen masks aren't coming down, do we need to sit in our seats transfixed? You know and like your neighbors? That's excellent, Big Chief. It's not what? What did I say? People enjoy being terrible to each other. I don't know that you're wrong, Adam. I don't know that you're wrong, unfortunately. And we need to explore why that is. We need to explore why that is. I loved, I'll be nice, but you can't stay long. You know, having a safe home place is important. So telling people they can't stay long is absolutely okay. I think we're seeing more people help each other out. You see it with deep clean channels, lawn channels. We can encourage others to do the same. It can really show humanity. Yes, Indigo. That is absolutely the little ways of helping people out are really, really important. I think it's really important. Humans are vicious primates. They can be. They certainly can be, Adam. I don't disagree. We are primates, and monkeys, primates are nasty, nasty, vicious animals. They are dangerous when cornered. You like deep clean channels, Kristen? All you all watch Midwest Magic cleaning. Everybody watch that one? You know, we were talking about potato salad on Wednesday, actually. We were talking about potato salad on Wednesday. And we all agreed that raisins don't go in potato salad. Yes, I feel really bad for that lady. I'm I'm glad they're working it out. I've met one woman who hasn't been groped or essayed as a child. So I don't know what I want to say. I, yeah, people are, apparently, apparently, somebody puts raisins in potato salad and friendships were lost over it, Big Chief. I think we've got more self-serving when we stopped being hunter-gatherers. In a tribe where each person's input keeps people alive, you learn how to communicate past difficulties. Yes, and we have family units that are atomized. And so people don't learn in a family unit how to argue. Oh, Lupita, that's so sweet. People don't learn and see as children people arguing passionately and getting through it and getting along. People don't see that done healthfully. There aren't models for how to reconcile online. You don't see TV shows where the big reveal, the whole climax is interrupted and people aren't in conflict, but they're working through the conflict, right? We don't see that. We see the conflict coming to blows and people going apart. Those are the models we see because of the way this country was settled. Our families left their families and came here alone. And so we don't have those models. We are talking communal versus individualist societies. Yes. So, how do we make an individualist society more communal? But the individualist, I mean, let's go back to boundaries or walls or something somebody else said. There are no absolutes. There was a quote in the book from a community leader who said, there are no absolutes. There are no absolutes. So, what do you guys think? Are there absolutes? Are we willing to concede that there might not be absolutes? That everybody's reality is valid? So, back to raisins and potato salad. I told that story at 4th of July picnic this weekend. I told the story of no raisins in potato salad. And child number two had a kicker for me. Child number two, they said, but how about apples in potato salad? And then explained that they had, oh, I didn't say worth protecting, Adam. I didn't say the worldview's worth protecting. I mean, do I believe that there are some people out there whose intent is not good? There are people out there. Chicken salad with raisins. Well, so what child number two said was consider celery, the crisp that you get from celery, and the sweet and the tart that you get from the sweet pickles. So if you cut the apples small, then it might work. And yeah, it's the contrast in texture. So you can go, yeah, I don't know that I like it because of the contrast in texture. Like it's like people who buy that tub from Kmart, Dollar Mart, and Finals and try to doctor it up. So in the book, one of the comments that was made that really struck me is it's like making cornbread. You need meal, you need flour, you need baking powder, you need eggs, and you need to take all those ingredients. You need to put all those ingredients together. If the ingredients stay separate, you ain't got cornbread. There ain't gonna be no cornbread. And everybody puts different things into their cornbread in similar but varying proportions. And who's to say? I mean, I made cornbread this weekend, but we call it corn pudding. It's not really like cornbread, it's much softer than cornbread. But I used cornbread mix to make it. Does it count as cornbread? The celery is neutral, not sweet, but the sweet pickle has a similar texture to an apple. They said they tried it and it was not awful. So all I'm saying here is if we think about it like ingredients, then most of us can agree there are no raisins in potato salad. Most of us. And some of us will agree that raisins in potato salad are a travesty, but we don't need to pillory the person who puts the raisins in the potato salad. I'm not so sure friendships should be broken over that. Although I can understand why if somebody brought raisin potato salad with raisins to my party, I might be a little peeved. I want Jews, Christians, and Muslims to live in peace, but I think their respective holy books are, shall we say, lacking. It's a delicate balance. It is a very delicate balance, Adam. I think there's good in bad in all of the books. I think there's good and bad in all of the books, and then I think humans interpret the books. So even if they are holy books, even if they are God's word that should be followed, we still have to interpret that law. And it's the interpretation that gives us problems, right? I think it depends on culture, right? When we mix cultures, these differences come up and we can learn new things even if we don't like it. Yeah, it's like Korean hot dogs, right? Vietnamese, French desserts. I'm pretty sure it was the Christians, not that Bible, that did all that bad shit. I'm pretty sure the Bible doesn't give instructions on how to colonize and go, well, Amalek, oh hell. I do know that in the Muslim sect cults that do the goofy stuff in the Muslim names, not the Quran. It's not the Quran saying go do bad stuff. It's the interpretation, right? The God of the Bible commands the taking of slaves. I won't celebrate that even in the cause of community. I I think it's interpretation. And I think there are times when we can decide that we don't agree with that anymore. And that's okay. I think that we have a God that's big enough to hear us say, you know what? We don't agree with slavery. We think it's not okay. And we get to set those rules for ourselves. Nowhere in the commands the taking of slaves. Is that the Old Testament, Adam? That commands the taking of slaves? It might say that, Kristen. The Old Testament might say that. Does it say it? What context does it say it in, Adam? I mean, I would argue we're not in that context anymore. It was more than 2,000 years ago. We're not in that context anymore. So I I don't think that rule needs to be followed, right? It's a different world. That's why Moses took the Israelites out of Egypt. Indeed it is. They were slaves in Egypt. They were slaves in Egypt. So it's interesting that Moses took the Israelites out of Egypt, but God, because slaves, and God commands the taking of slaves. I'd be interested in the context. Leviticus. Leviticus 25:44. Your male and female slaves are to come from the nations around you. From them you may buy slaves. You may also buy some of the temporary residents living among you and members of their clans born in your country, and they will become your property. You can bequeath them to your children as inherited property and can make them slaves for life, but you must not rule over your fellow Israelites ruthlessly. I don't know that he's I mean, I don't want to get into biblical interpretation here, but I interpret that as you can, not you must. You can, not you must, which are very different to me. And Leviticus, I mean, there's a whole lot in Leviticus. Good night, Lupita. Hugs and love to you. God also said in the New Testament that he regretted that in flooding the world. So even God changed his perspective. Take the Bible with a grain of salt. It was taken from an oral culture and bound into a book nearly 50 years after Jesus supposedly lived. Exactly. Slavery was an economic structure back in the day. And it was a different thing than what we think of now. It was a whole different thing than we think of now. I mean, we talk about being free, and what that meant is that you weren't bonded to a lord. So you were a free man. You didn't have a home place, right? So, what does it take to accept raisins in potato salad? Does it take apples first? Is that a first step? Managing social change in a slow and pragmatic manner with the conviction that absolutes don't exist. So, again, slaves became kings and were allowed to thrive and become high and grow king stature. Yes. Adam's good at taking us off the rails. That's okay. We will come back. He does get points. So this one really struck me. Beth talked about managing social change in a slow and pragmatic manner with the conviction that absolutes don't exist. And that is somewhat what I'm hearing from you, Indigo, that you need to be willing. When they say absolutes don't exist, I think what I hear is you need to be willing to look at the wall. I think we put the wall up as a boundary, and the wall's up and we never look at it again and we don't think anything about it. It's just a wall. It's there and we never ever think about it again. And we don't look at them. And we don't think, well, what would it be like if that wall wasn't there? What is that wall doing? Is it load bearing? Does it need to be there? It's like renovating a house. We'll go back to the deconstruction model. One of the reasons deconstruction is so important is so that you don't just Adam's a train gone off the rails. Sometimes people get thrown through the wall and then you got to call the cops. Sometimes people come barreling through the wall. I mean, that's why the wall is there. But there's a difference, right, between somebody who gets thrown through the wall and someone who comes barreling through the wall. And how do we figure out the difference? How do we figure out the difference? And how do we mitigate the harm? I had a situation happen recently where there was harm done to someone I love. And the harm happened in my house, and I wasn't there to see it happen. And nobody else noticed it until this person reported to me the hurt they felt when the harm was perpetrated. And so now, hearts ablaze, more hearts. Look at all the hearts coming off of my chin. We'll make some real ones. Make some more real ones. Susan, are you still here, sweetie? I'd really love to hear your thoughts on the book. If you're still here, if you haven't run off to bed. Hudspeth said that comment about managing social change in a slow and pragmatic manner in response to a white colleague of his who gestured toward an empty chair beside him at a public event with the startlingly casual words, "Come on, segregation's over." Susan, did you enjoy the book? I know you were one of the Gato. We are talking about the whole book, dear. Have you read it? Welcome in. I haven't seen you before. Welcome to the Corner Joint. Sorry, guys, I'm warm. I am extra toasty. Managing social change in a slow, pragmatic manner with the conviction that absolutes don't exist. Although I can think of some absolute, I can think of some absolutes. Okay, Susan, you fall asleep easy nowadays? That's hard to manage. Ah, indigo. Thank you, dear. Gato, it is about an anthropologist's quest to understand the deep social and political divides in American society and the everyday strategies we can use to overcome them. So let's jump. What did you guys think all of about the chapters about cars? Hot times too. You're so sweet, Indigo. I know the air is on. It's just a little stuffy in my corner over here. And I did have to take my socks off. It's a warm day, so I really didn't need them on. What did you guys think of the chapters in the book talking about cars as moving boundaries and the need for roads that are more that are more What is the word? Um, Let me find the. I think there are some things like defining human treatment of others and what constitutes our rights. I tend to agree. Those seem pretty finite. Do you think that I think that those absolutes still tend to be pretty universal. But I think that the way that people express those absolutes, the way that people interpret those absolutes, right? It's all an interpretation. So the question is, what would it mean to realize a vision of a truly livable road that's hospitable to living beings of many kinds? And these particular chapters, you know, I don't know how many of you know this. I've talked about it in the past. My dearest friend, my very, very dear friend, was the victim of a terrible car accident. And he was hit and his body was thrown. And he was in mostly a coma for a really long time. And he's not in that coma anymore, but he can't walk or talk or communicate. And so the idea of a livable road that's hospitable to many, to living beings of many kinds, is something that holds a lot of meaning for me. Because, like this young man, he was hit by a lethal weapon weighing several tons. And so we have a situation where people are on the road and I I have a family and I drove one of those bigger vehicles because I had a family. I had young children and we were in the car all the time because of where we lived. And so I can put myself in the place of someone driving one of those cars I mean, I drive a minivan. It's more than I need. It's certainly heavy enough to do some real damage, especially going 45 miles an hour. Even going 20 miles an hour in a school zone is enough to do damage to a child. But the roads, Indigo, the roads aren't set up to protect pedestrians. My friend was on the side of the road because of a different accident and was plowed into. So my friend stopped because of an accident. What would it mean to realize the vision of a truly livable road, hospitable to living beings of many kinds? That's a sentence that really resonated with me. And when we think about building building a corner joint where everybody is welcome. First Minnesota goodbye, y'all. When we think about building a corner joint where everybody is welcome, how do we realize a vision of a truly livable road, hospitable to living beings of many kinds? Yeah, drunk driving. But again, this wasn't a drunk driver. I can guarantee you in this case, it was not a chemically inebriated driver. And, we talk about getting rid of risks, but accidents are always going to happen. Like I said, we had an incident here in my home where somebody incurred harm. I wasn't there. I didn't see it happen. The harm wasn't intended, but that doesn't change the fact that the harm happened. Doesn't change the effect. My father quit smoking in his 20s. He smoked as a young kid. He quit smoking in his 20s. And he still got and died from lung cancer. People hear that he died of lung cancer and they always ask if he smoked. Small, sustainable communities, that's one way of doing it. That's one way of doing it. Train things between communities. But I don't know. That would take a big, huge change in the way we live, wouldn't it? It would take a big, huge change in the way we live. So, how about this one? Here's another quote that struck me. The car thing was hard, y'all. Reading all of that about safety. Cars do carry a deep symbolic meaning. Exactly, Gatto. Exactly, Gatto. Oh, Indigo, you're so sweet. Yes, we need to start with teaching empathy and compassion. And another thing happened this weekend. I have a friend, family friend, who's always been really reserved around me. They've had boundaries up. They've had walls up with me. And I walked up to them the other day, and I expected that I was going to receive a defensive posture. So I expected a certain wall to be there. And the interaction that was delivered came without a wall. I had been unconsciously holding my breath, expecting the wall. And so when I didn't receive the wall, there was a couple of slow blinks, and then I had to pivot and respond in kind, which was absolutely fine. It was excellent. But I had to be willing to run into the wall in order to see that it had been taken down. I had to get close enough to see that the shields had been lowered. And that brings me to my next quote, which I found really interesting. Yeah, people are dropping bombs and killing babies out here. Shit does have to change. I agree, Kristen. That stuff is terrible. Yes, Indigo. Sometimes the problem is, sometimes those shields, people use their shields as a weapon. Or they're unskilled at using their shields, and it comes across like a weapon. And so then what do we do? What do we do then? You build trust. You hover outside the reach of their shields. You hover outside the boundary in a way that is inoffensive and acceptable. But that's a really, really hard place to find. In fact, there's a place in the book where the author says that he was trying to get an interview with Breitbart Media and it failed miserably. It failed miserably. Sometimes you can take a tact that seems perfectly open and above board, and it's still rejected. Friends seem important, like that they'd play some significant role in bringing this to fruition. Well, friends are important, and friends are difficult, right, Gato? Because sometimes one's friends don't necessarily appreciate a variety of perspectives. And so you gotta be willing somehow. Sounds cliche, but maybe we learn to live, laugh, love. We do need to learn that, Gato. See you Friday, Indigo. I've got it on my calendar. Sleep tight, dear. Don't let the bed bugs bite. Not that you have any. It's always what we said when I was a kid. Sleep tight, don't let the bed bugs bite. Gato, I agree. We need to live, laugh, love. I mean, that's one of the things the book talks about is that we need to be more connected to each other, not less. So, in the chapter on white body armor, the author talks about Shelbyville, Tennessee, and going there for a white nationalist political rally. And how he, as a brown skinned man, felt going there. But as an anthropologist, he had the intuition that essential insights could come from putting yourself where you don't quite belong, putting your own body on the line. So I guess I'd ask you guys, bed bugs are serious now, not the cute joke they used to be. Indeed, Kristen, they are certainly not the cute joke they used to be. They are terrifying and serious nowadays. Essential insights could come from putting yourself where you don't quite belong, putting your own body on the line. While he's looking for a Kevlar bodysuit. I guess my question is, what do you guys think of that? Essential insights come from putting yourself where you don't quite belong. I think there's a lot to learn from just absorbing a different environment than you might not have ever been in. What is it like at the corner bar down the street? What is it like, I don't know, in the Home Depot? What is it like in the yarn store? Have you ever gone into a yarn store? Why would you want to go into a yarn store? Just passing by the yarn store means that you don't learn about all of the subtle variations in the yarn store, which is fine if you recognize that you know nothing about yarn and listen to the folks who know something about yarn. Listen to the experts. People who have experience with yarn will tell you that there's all different kinds of yarn. It's not just one thing. There's hand spun, there's synthetic, there's non-synthetic. There's all different kinds of yarn. Hand dyed, hand spun, machine dyed, machine spun, all different gradations of information, none of which most people care about. But that is just one example of a world that you don't even know exists until you walk into the yarn store. Putting yourself where you don't quite belong. I'm putting myself where I don't belong on YouTube. I don't belong. Oh, second Minnesota goodbye. No, we're talking, what do you learn from being, yeah, what do you learn from being in a different space than what you're familiar with? Do you go places where you're not comfortable? Do you stretch that bandwidth so that you learn to speak other languages? So where are we? Two more pages of notes. Outside every day? Good, Kristen. Learning to speak to different people? Oh, let's back up a little bit. Let's back up again to using your shield as a weapon. If consciousness itself is a horror, as Ligotti argues, what if our walls are not social failings but existential defenses? Well, they speak to me usually and I deal and navigate it. Good, Kristen. Consciousness itself is a horror, as Ligotti argues. What if our walls are not social failings but existential defenses? I think that's actually a really good observation, Gato, that our walls are existential defenses and that what it takes is a willingness to look at the walls, to open our eyes against, open our eyes to what we're afraid of, open our eyes and actually look. And even be aware of the things we're not seeing. The walls become invisible. We don't see them there. We know how to traverse them. We know how to get in and out. But for other people, those existential defenses can be shields used as weapons. Shields used as weapons. And it's on page 187. Page 187. Let me read to you again. There a sense of duty beyond mutual benefit, a higher moral injunction. I think the higher moral injunction is to build a road that honors and is safe for all beings, whether they're in a car or on a horse. How do we look at all the ways of being and come together in ways that are honoring of all those different ways of being? And I will suggest that the first rule of tolerance is that you can't be tolerant of intolerance. The first rule of tolerance is you can't be tolerant of intolerance. But there again, interpretation. What does intolerance look like? How do we know there's intolerance? What are the gradations of expression of intolerance? Safe instead of honored? I'll go with that, Kristen. Safe is good enough. But everyone has to feel safe. How do we create that universe? I mean, I assume that the 5 of you that are still here tonight have some interest in creating a universe like that. I know I'd like to see a universe where everybody's safe to be in the world. But should we connect? Is he ignoring the idea that consciousness itself might make connection inherently tragic or impossible? I don't know that walls need to be broken down to foster connection. I think I think that walls need to have doors, and that we don't need to have people who are skilled at traversing across doors, across boundaries. I mean, Gato, I guess again, I'll say we don't get much. You don't get much with cornmeal and eggs and flour and sugar and salt and baking soda. You don't get much with those ingredients on their own. All the good shit comes when you mix the ingredients together. But there are recipes and there are guidelines. But again, raisins might not go on potato salad, but apples might. And sweet pickles for sure do. Although we could argue about sweet pickles, because I bet you there are people out there who don't like sweet pickles in their potato salad. They are wrong, and I will maintain they're wrong. But hell, they can go make their potato salad without sweet pickles. I won't eat any of it. Actually, I probably will. It'll taste just fine. So in this uh I'm going to read again. Let me read several paragraphs for you. No onions in the potato salad, Kristen? Girl, seriously, no onions? I don't know how to do no onions in potato salad. But for you, sweetie, we can make it happen. I do that for my Muslim friends. My Thanksgiving stuffing has sausage in it. So I make the stuffing with everything except the sausage. Make all the stuffing, and I pull some out after it's all combined except for the sausage. I pull some out and set it aside, and then I put the sausage in. Not a hard thing to do. Doesn't take me any time. It's hardly any trouble. Maybe okay now? You've grown? Good. How unbearable is it to be around the occasional person? Our own selves want that space, that peace, that disregard. It can be horrific to have to listen to someone yap instead of we turn our backs. We already covered that a little bit, Gato, I think. You can't let people own your time. You have to have a limit on your time. You have to say no. And boundaries aren't walls. Boundaries are maintained. Walls are just there. Which is not to say you don't have to maintain a wall, y'all. You do. But I'm trying to go with the metaphor. So, chapter 11, turning right and left. The alt-right Breitbart News Network is headquartered on a nondescript office building in San Vicente Boulevard in West LA. The building was less than a mile away from where we lived for much of 2017, and I drove or biked past it countless times. There was no signage outside that brick building with dark tinted windows. nor was there any evidence of the country's presence in the lobby inside. That year, Breitbart had become one of the most influential conservative outlets in the country, and I was profoundly curious about what went on inside the building. The hashtag war on the boardroom door, for example, that journalists had reported seeing. But there was no obvious way to approach the company for a visit or for the beginnings of a conversation. Eventually, a mutual acquaintance put me in touch with one of Breitbart's senior editors. I am out of town at the moment visiting my early hominid ancestors, Homo conservatus, the editor joked in reply. I was surprised by his lighthearted tone and his jest about anthropology. He offered a half-hour meeting at a nearby cafe, requesting that the conversation be off the record, and asked what I hoped to accomplish in our meeting. As an anthropologist, my method is to canvass firsthand perspectives and contrary points of view on topics that people would otherwise tend to take for granted, I replied. I would like to interview you briefly regarding your sense of Breitbart's role in shaping public opinion in the country at present, I wrote, an earnest entreaty and what felt like an unexpected opening for dialogue. Lastly, I have read intriguing reports about your war room and would like to give, in my own writing, if possible, a brief sense of what your operation looks like from the inside to better situate and contextualize the stories that one finds on the website. Soon enough, I learned that I had pushed too far. There is no way I can discuss what goes on inside the company, especially as we have never met, the editor wrote back. To me, that is a red flag, and I am afraid I have to cancel our meeting. Dozens of journalists sought him out each day, he added, and most of them have malevolent intentions, either political or commercial. The turn in tone was swift and unexpected, and there was no going back. A wall had gone up, impossible to scale. That was a bad week, he finally conceded a few months later when we crossed paths briefly at Freedom Fest in Las Vegas. We were getting threats. We had a bunker mentality, but we never had another chance to talk. I've since replayed this exchange many times over in my head. Was there malice in what I wrote? I'd clearly come across as far too eager. And you don't have to be an anthropologist to know that social life always has the potential for overstepped boundaries and defensive reactions. How to make this feel more like a friendly knock on the door than a home invasion. How to make this feel more like a friendly knock on the door than a home invasion. 3rd Minnesota goodbye, y'all. There's a wisdom in learning to love what you have to eat and not what you want to eat. And this is my main focus of all my whole life right now, is my main thing to conquer. Rice and fish or rice and chicken, but every day. Yes, Gato, I agree. I agree. That is also true. But I think that wisdom comes with a tolerance for oneself, for the situation. Nothing he could do different. Exactly. There's nothing he could do different. Sometimes, despite all the best intentions, the timing is off, the signal gets scrambled, things just happen badly. Things just happen badly. Kristen, what did you think about the conversations about shedding walls? I thought it was a great metaphor. Do you think there's a relationship between the menstrual taboo and the kind of intolerance that prompts calls for a border wall? I look at it a little metaphorically, she says. You build a wall around your communication style. We're going to put up this wall. We're not crossing it to talk about menstruation. We're not crossing it to talk about abortion. You build that wall and pretend that everything on the other side doesn't exist. You don't cross it to talk about any of the difficult topics that need to be talked about. Shedding walls made you mad? Really, Kristen, why? Changing someone's mind is never just a matter of rhetorical persuasion. The strongest opinions have something like a visceral quality to them, as if they pulsed through the blood and gut. Anyone hearing those opinions has to wrestle with the ebb and flow of these sensations, with feelings of anger and fear, desire and disgust. Oh, you didn't like that at all, Kristen. Interesting. Well, what about the activists who partnered with a Republican to get what about the activists who partnered with a Republican to get the tax on menstrual products taken taken down? What about that one? Did you think the same of that one as you did about the entrepreneur? I actually am quite fond of the loophole cereal they made. I'm really fond of that idea, entrepreneur activism or not. Make a cereal called Loopholes that you put menstrual products in so that it can be purchased with Snap. I am all over that. I am on that like nothing. I think that's a brilliant idea. She learned how to talk pretty, speak sweet, whatever about that, and the crappy attitude lady previously was crap as well. Okay, Kristen. I thought I thought a lot of the cereal. I thought it was a great idea. We don't have anybody here for Third Minnesota Goodbye, y'all. Yeah, that one was awful too, Kristen. There's some awful things. There's some awful things. I agree, Kristen. I agree. We're all worked up about the girl and not a peep about the person who did it. Right. We're all worked up and hit arms akimbo about the girl and not a peep about the guy. I'm in agreement with you there, absolutely. What's a breastscope, Kristen? Don't throw your Kindle. It's not good for your Kindle to do that. We got nobody for Third Minnesota Goodbye. We kind of petered out here. That is okay. We will have somebody for Third Minnesota Goodbye next time. Thank you for joining us, Kristen. I don't know who else is still here. Gato, are you still here? Sounds like Adam's taken off. Maybe he's still here. Gato and Kristen. Yeah. Clark! The waste incinerator put in the poor community, and this is when I decided, yes, actually, we need to do tribalism. Hi, Clark. How are you? You win Third Minnesota Goodbye, Clark. It is good to see you. Look at what you get for Third Minnesota Goodbye. Did you know we do a Third Minnesota Goodbye prize, Clark? Today it is yours. Gumby. I never watched much Gumby. My major exposure to Gumby has been primarily through Mr. Robinson's Neighborhood. Eddie Murphy gave me most of my Gumby exposure. He is just that much before my time. He was never something I really watched on TV. I don't know much about Gumby. I know I had a hair in my lipstick. I hate that. So, Clark, email me, email me, and I will get you your Gumby picture. Here's my email. And with that, y'all, I'm going to say adios. I will see you all on Wednesday.